Former military president Ibrahim Babangida, in his memoir, in his autobiography, explained why he changed his last name, and the explanation or the underlying reason will actually give you an insight into how Nigeria works. Here's what he said. However, before I settled down to work at the 1st Brigade, a particular incident led me to add Babangida to my name. During official engagements that led to my deployment to Kaduna, officers who confused the Yoruba name Badamasi with my last name Badamasi repeatedly asked me whether I was Yoruba. That question had also come up a few years before during my enlisting interview for the military. Since that question persisted, and since I knew I wasn't Yoruba, I decided to take on my father's other name as my last name. And I remember joking about it then and saying, regardless of the name change. Oops. My computer went off. Okay. Regardless of the name change, I am still my father's son. Okay. So this is someone who was confident in who he was. He was confident in his identity. He said, regardless of the name change, he was his father's son. So why did he, feel it was so important to not be recognized as Yoruba? And the answer to that actually helps you understand how Nigeria works. The thing is, there's a backstory to it. It's in the 1960s. I think Babangida joined the military in the 1964, something about thereabouts. But back in the 1960s or post-independence, immediate post-independence Nigeria, the North controlled the government through MPC, that's Sardauna's party, Northern People's Congress. Balewa was the prime minister, but the real power behind the throne was Sardauna Bello, Amadu Bello. So it was, and however, the military on the other hand was dominated at the officer level, was dominated by those who were mostly from the south, southern officers, mostly the Igbos actually. And so this made the government uneasy, like, oh, we're controlling the government, but the military is dominated by these southerners. The officer level of the military is dominated by these southerners. What if they decide to take us out, which eventually happened anyway. But I digressed. Anyway, so what did the North do? The northern establishment decided to, at least try and even things up, try as much as possible to get a lot of northerners into the military. In fact, in that book, IBB did talk about going visiting their secondary school to canvass them towards joining the military. At some point, even that Sardauna himself, Amadu Bello, actually visited them and also encouraged himself. Abdul Salami was his cousin, Maman Vatsa, and a lot of the boys who went to the same secondary school in Mina to join the military in that time. So you can see that there was that preference for northern officers in the military. So it was very important to not just be a northerner, in order to fast track your way through things, but also to be seen as a northerner. So you can't afford to have a name sounding Yoruba, in that era of the military when the government's policy was to actually encourage northern military boys, northern boys to join the army. And I think allegedly there are some people who were not qualified who actually made it into the military simply because they were from the north, so they had to lower some of the standard in order to get some of them in. Allegedly, I will not name names anyway, but some of them who were alleged at the time went on to have very long careers in the military. Anyway, that was why IBB, being a very strategic person, had to just change his name because he couldn't afford to be confused or to be thought of as a Yoruba man. Imagine if in certain offices or in certain rooms where decisions were being made and his name comes up. He was a young officer at this time. His name comes up and they think, oh, he's a Yoruba boy, not knowing he's from the north. That could have limited his military progression. Also, he thought anyway. So because of that, it was very important for him to not be confused as a Yoruba man. So now you know anyway. Anyway, that autobiography is quite, well, I think it's a bit interesting. I could do a review if anyone wants me to, if I see enough interest with it. But yeah, that's why Babangida changed his name to his surname to Babangida from Badamasi. Now you know.